Mattys Mental Health Podcast, aiming to spread awareness on mental health by sharing the real-life stories of those who've experienced it firsthand.
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll. Welcome to the show, Mr. Coach Joe Puiia. How's it going? Much for agreeing to do this?
All right, it goes well. Hey, the sun's out. There's a nice breeze. We're on Puiia.
Yeah.
What else could you want?
What else could you want? It's a beautiful day in the fall time. I love the fall time.
Yeah, me too.
It's a good time. Reminds me of football.
Indeed.
Which is which is where we met. You coach football, and you've been like a mentor to me and many others. I don't know if I told you this, but I've met tons of people, like just around. And if anyone in the island has played football or baseball, they know you, and they all say the same thing. Like, "Oh man, he helped me so much with my sport, and he did, so much extra work, just one-on-one or small groups, which is what you also do." You are a mentor to a lot, and you're kind of pillar of the community, one would say.
That's humbling to hear that. It just, I guess my approach doesn't actually even bring those kind of things into how I think of myself. I just kind of like figure it's my turn to give back. I'm 170. So anyways, I can't play myself anymore. So it's now time to, do the shareware. And as long as the kids want to be there, it's exciting and invigorating to the old guy.
Yeah.
To give back. So if in fact it's having an impact, that makes me happy. But that's obviously not why you go out.
Right.
I have something in the visor of my car, so that grounds me every time I get out to do something, and it's a simple little grounding mechanism for me, and it basically says it's not about you.
Right.
So before my foot hits the tar or the grass or whatever, I get real.
Yeah.
So that's just my approach. So, but it is humbling.
Right. Yeah, and you told me that last time I came in to visit. It's not about you. I think that's a very powerful message. And doing a little bit of coaching myself, I think that's like what you got to remember, and that's very profound.
I think kids and athletes, they pick up on it. They know the difference between the coaches who still keep themselves as a center of whatever, or that they understand that they're the center and the coach is there to enable and pass on what they have to them, and is rooting for them.
Yeah.
That's the kind of deal. Like when I'm done my coaching with them, they know that I become a fan.
Yeah.
So it's a simple way to look at it, but to me, that's the way it is for me.
Right. Yeah. Do you mind holding this a little closer? I'm not sure if it's coming in loud.
Okay. Sure.
I think it should be good now. So maybe just a little background on you. You were a counselor? That was your job?
Yeah. I was with Employment and Immigration way back when. I was probably started in after my education as I worked at first of all with handicapped individuals for a couple of years, and eventually got on with the government as an employment counselor, and went on for my master's. Did my practicum at Mental Health in Summerside, which was kind of great, and of course I've been coaching for years and years and years. So it just kind of those things kind of marry up together, and and so that's who I've become. And I'm in a house full of teachers with my wife and kids, and so it's just sort of it just unfolded that way for me. So all meaningful experiences, and in my becoming, and I'm 70, and I'm not done yet becoming, so I'm still on my journey. So it's just I keep trying to, just actively stay open to, to keeping up and continuing to, get better as a coach, get better at this and that, because, we're not fully formed, perfect beings. And, I'm kind of living example of that. And I just sort of keep that openness, hopefully, about myself. So it's where I am.
Well, I think that's really inspiring. And it's something you notice, like, as a player to a coach, you're still very busy at 70 years old. And with all the coaching that you do, for anyone who doesn't know, you're very involved with Holland College teams now. And individuals as well, individual players.
Yes, yeah.
You do a lot of that.
Yeah, the phone kind of rings, and, I don't advertise or do anything like that, but the phone rings. Somebody's talked to somebody, and then they ask. And again, back to the other thing of it is, I feel, as long as I'm able to walk upon the earth and someone's calling and asking to spend that kind of time, that saying no is just not in me, and as long as somebody's coming and working hard and gaining something from it, then I'm just more than open to it. Now, I did promise my wife that no more dugouts, if you will, and or sidelines in football, but working with those who really want to work hard to get better is something that is something I want to do as long as I can. As long as there's value in it to the people who are calling.
Right. Yeah. No, that's awesome.
So it fills my weeks and days, and it makes me tired. I sleep at night, and but really, it's invigorating for me too. It gives me life, and I haven't had to worry since I retired from actively counseling and working for government. My last 10 years, I was at Veterans Affairs, at head office, and so I'm just as busy as I ever was. So it's probably good.
Yeah. I think that's like it's kind of a thing for some people. When they retire, they're like, "Oh, what am I gonna do with all my time now?"
Yeah.
So.
No, not that I don't have that problem. That's kind of good, And then I still have my chores around here with someone, reminds me that, you really do need to do this.
Yeah. We talked a lot about, the last time I was over, we talked about building connections, building bridges, and how important that is to mental health. I couldn't agree more, and I think that's. Do you want to get into that a little bit?
Yeah. It's something I think I've learned in my own experiences, and that is, and it was I think it's an ancient Chinese proverb, or I don't know if it's Chinese in origin or whatever, but it was, what does it benefit a man if he knows all there is to know, but yet he has no way to impart it to another? And that basically, that all of that wonder and knowledge just rots inside of him. And so I've learned kind of through that it's building the actual bridges between you and someone else, where you share with one another. That's where it's really at. And if you can't build bridges, then you end up really isolated. And so does the person who was basically trying to get to you, right? That whatever you do have to share with them doesn't get shared, because you really have no road to walk between each other. So it's just that kind of, so as I look at my own coaching, I spend more time thinking about being open, being, just, willing to allow people in. And then the other thing you learn as a coach is it's not just you trying to teach somebody something. Somebody's trying to build a bridge to come toward you. So it's the good bridge is the one that you both work to complete. And,
Right.
So that's kind of how I have been looking at things. And even in counseling, it's a similar thing. It's just not a coaching, counseling, whatever. It's not just a place for you to exercise your intellect or knowledge or any of those kind of things. It's a place where you share and live and grow together, and hopefully, they get something of meaning and value from you, and you actually, if you're honest and open, you learn from your clients or your patients or your athletes. You learn.
Yeah, of course.
If you're not open, then you're not building bridges. And I feel whether it's an athlete, patient, client, or whatever, they know when that the other party is open or closed. They just know. So that's basically my focus is more now on opening doors, inviting dialogue, inviting communication, and just see what happens. Because unconsciously, you're either building or not building a bridge to that individual.
Right.
So that's kind of my approach, and not get locked up in how much you know or how much.
Yeah.
How much of an expert are you? Well, those have value, but without the bridge, the value is minimal.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my take.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to look at it, because I don't know, I think all the best coaches do that. And, like when that doesn't happen, like kind of like what you said, like, oh, I'm an expert. It's kind of like almost like a military setting. It's like, I know what to do. Don't listen to me. Like, I'm closed off, whatever. But, just from like a sports point of view, as far as performance, I think building those bridges is really where you're going to see, like the real spike in performance. And also, like, we talked about this too, I think, like, the connection is really kind of the real benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the sport is like the fun part. The sport gets you physically healthy, but the connections that you make with your teammates and your coaches, that's kind of like where the benefit is.
Yeah, and even when I'm working with somebody, one of the things is that I have to respect their part in what's happening, because, for instance, if I film people in performance or in practice and do the analysis of the video and stuff like this, but when we sit and go over it, basically I just flat out tell them, I don't want you doing this because some old coach told you to. I need you to understand what I'm saying, if you possibly can, and because at some point you need to own it. You have to own it. Otherwise, if you don't own it, you're not going to make it part of who now function within the sport or the specific part of your sport. So then they really do start taking ownership, and they do start working, doing little chunks of homework if I give them, in terms of doing drills and stuff like this or whatever. And it was the same back in counseling too. There was, they needed to, you need to own together what you were working on. Otherwise, if it's just emanating from you as some sort of authoritarian intellect, whatever, it will tend to fade.
Yeah.
And then life kind of takes over, and you say, yeah. But if the ownership happens, then you have the makings of change, or things like this. They're going to move forward in a way they want to go, and they'll own it. So, and hopefully you would have had maybe a little more impact in situations like that, other than just being this authoritarian intellect, speaking at them instead of with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the approach I take. And, really, I'm a little bit sometimes, I don't mean brutal, but I do draw lines, because if you find somebody who really isn't into it to, quote, move their personal markers or do stuff like that, then you're kind of wasting your time and theirs. And, so they, but usually at the beginning of the relationship, we discuss that, so that
Right.
they know where you're coming from, and they know what it's all about, and it's about them. And, the joint work we do to take them where they want to go. So that ownership is important. So we kind of really go after that early when you're building that kind of relationship.
Right. Yeah, and that's something I noticed early on, like, because we've done a lot of extra work together.
Yes.
You've kicked my ass many times.
Yes.
Yeah.
And but you guys, you worked and you liked the work. So
Yeah.
it's great.
But that's something I did notice, because I've had like a fair amount of coaches, but I can remember, like, because we're in Cornwall here, I remember starting, and it was kind of like the way you explain things, like, you kind of like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, this is what you got to do, and then, like, this is where we're at, and this is where you got to be, and this is how we got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, as you said, other coaches maybe like just, and I think that relates to anything like teaching, parenting, or whatever it is. It's like you gotta explain, like, this is how it is, and this is why it is, and this is where we got to go.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to do this because I said.
Yeah, and I think what I try to do is in the early parts and with you and that is saying, well, what do you want? What do you, where do you want to go?
Right.
Where do you want to be? Okay. And once we get that, maybe a clear picture of that, then we start discussing between the two of us or whoever else it is that, well, this is what it looks like, smells like, and tastes like. Do you still want to go? Okay. Because if so, I know the drills, I know the structure, I know all of those things, but none of those make any difference if you're not really committed to that's where I want to go. Okay. And even now, if it's a pitching clinic or QBs or whatever I'm working with, it's that same thing. Why are we meeting? Why are we getting together? Okay. And we come to an agreement on that, then we can start structuring how to get there. And then at that point, you're starting to build that bridge. Now you can start carrying stuff across it, whether it's a drill or a piece of knowledge or whatever. It's the bridge. It's just understanding why you're both on the bridge, understanding why have this sort of relationship with one another. Then you can start doing the work.
Right.
But until then, it's, and, like in any relationship, at some points early in the relationship, the coach may be doing most of the carrying, but at some point you're always encouraging both sides of it to be doing the work. And as soon as you can get to that, then the faster the bridge gets built, the better it gets built, the stronger it becomes. All of those good things start happening as part of the process. But, it all comes from the beginning of, understanding where you're starting from. Where do you want to go?
Right. Would you say, we talked a little bit, I think, before too, how building connections like this and other connections, how important that is to mental health.
Yeah. With the mental health, like I said, we have talked about, like I firmly believe now that, okay, I'm 70, so I'm a kid of the 60s. I grew up in a very Italian kind of military, kind of really firm house.
Right.
My father was a veteran of the war, so the thing of it is there was a certain way that many of us grew up back then, and I want to be careful to say that my words don't get painted across everybody, but what in some cases what was happening is like, if we start talking about personalities and issues people are having today, like in terms of back in my day, if you got your chest out, you stood up on a chair, somebody, probably your mother or father, is going to knock you right off it, which in one way stifles your development of your specialness or your identity. And but that's just the way it was. You either towed the line, or you, as soon as you could, you get out and went on your way to become whoever it is you were going to become. But so sometimes we were a little bit too restrictive in our bringing up our children, and now sometimes because now we're kind of maybe more a me, or what's in this for me kind of thing. Now we maybe have gone to the other extreme, where, sometimes, not all the time, like I said, but sometimes, mom and dad are getting their own stuff done. So we allow more, and sometimes too much, of just somebody like growing up like a weed, which is the other extreme. So I have found that both extremes you pay penalties for. And what I have also found is that, like kind of back in my day, there wasn't the dialogue. You talked at people. You really didn't talk with people, and that includes your children. It was easy enough to just demand, to overpower, which had a certain impact on the young person growing up. As much as the other one of not having any of that on the other extreme. So
the other extreme being like borderline neglect, or not build a connection.
Or the other extreme would be where the child or the person is not experiencing, that there is anybody else there. So so in other words, we're feeling in the earlier version oppressed, but on the other extreme abandoned.
Okay. Yeah.
So I just find, and I'm 70, and so please forgive me, but I just find that we're really uncomfortable with balance. Where we start, really feeling, that our ups and downs are not just so wild that we can't feel balanced, but we just seem not to be comfortable when things are balanced. We just seem to gravitate toward these extremes, and then we pay these prices, and some of the prices we pay are in the issues we're seeing with mental health. When someone feels abandoned, well, they feel abandoned. So if they're oppressed or really squashed and diminished, they have issues there. I think one of the decent things that's in a difficult situation is, I really don't believe that mental health is any worse now than it was back when I was young.
Really?
I believe personally that we are now feeling at least the freedom to talk about it, to bring it out. I think many of us may have, in some way or form, whether in school or whether in some of the homes we lived in, felt it, but felt no way to really express it. And it wasn't cool to. It just wasn't. And so many suffered in silence. Now it's at least more acceptable that when things are awry, that we come out and say it. As a child, I didn't feel mobile enough to do anything about what I was experiencing. Today, I mean, do we see more homelessness? We see more detached people in our world. Well, yeah, and that's at the other extreme where we've basically got up and removed ourselves from the fire, but now we're alone and we're feeling abandoned. So, in either case, I just find that we just are uncomfortable with balance. But getting into what we've talked about before was like, what I think is missing, and is this respect that is embedded in dialogue. Is that when I truly dialogue with somebody, when I truly listen, it doesn't guarantee the outcome of, okay, if you dialogue, therefore you're going to get your way. No, that's not it. It's just that both parties respect each other, say their piece, and respect each other's position. And, I think people find that they'll have a worth. They have a value when someone respects how they feel, what their thoughts are, and those things. And when we don't do that, or if it's missing, then we just tend to float to the extremes of things, or feeling disconnected, feeling all of these nasty kind of things. And some of us just can't handle it, and we need help. So it's just, in my day where you were afraid to ask for help or speak as to what was happening, or today where you may feel that you're on the edge of society somewhere and no one cares and no one's listening, but it still comes down to how do we treat one another, whether it's mom, dad, grampy, grammy, the neighbor, whether bullying or all of these other things come. It's just sort of, all of them are manners in which we either respect or disrespect one another. But a lot of it is that we just don't seem to know how to comfortably put ourselves off to the side and actually meet somebody in conversation and respect them. And as a parent, I think you need to do that. Now, as a parent, you might also need to draw the line and say, hey, look, I understand where you're coming from. However, this is where we're going to go, and this is why. And so that somebody doesn't feel devalued, anything like that. But at the same time, then I think what happens is your kids or your students or your whatever are still going to feel comfortable walking across that bridge, because they know that even though they might be a little cross, mad, or whatever, that you can have that discussion. You can do that. You will be respected. You will be talked to. And you won't be, turned away. You're not going to be isolated. So it gets back to that bridge building, is that, a lot of things go across bridges. Some of them are real nice stuff, and other things are difficult things, but the bridge is there for a reason. It's there and both people know it. Then you use it for its purpose. If it's not there, then it can get ugly.
Right.
I don't know if that's what you were referring to, but
No, I was, yeah, for sure. I have a couple questions, but that's all super super wise, and I think so much truth in what you said. But as far as, do you think that had something to do with the counterculture in the 60s from the war vets coming from like the World War II?
Yeah.
And the way that
well, I think, yeah, like in the 60s, well, when I grew up and it was the Vietnam War, it was, this is the time of Woodstock. This is the time where, especially the teens and whatever else, we're getting militant. We're starting to say, well, no, that's not all right.
Right.
And no, I'm not going to do that. And basically started this sort of movement to move away from the say the dutiful little Johnny and Sally who didn't ever raise their voice to feeling like, well, I have to, and braving going against sometimes mom and dad, some against the police, the government, and whatever else, because they took to the streets and voiced their opinion. But it was part of that revolt of coming out, and which tells you that they felt they needed to, because they weren't being, getting back to our last little piece, if you're not being heard and if your voice isn't being respected, then what choices do you have sometime? You either run away and hide somewhere, or you stand up and say, no, well, that's not right. No, I don't agree with that.
Right.
And I'm not going to war.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's a big one.
If you make me or try to make me, I'm out of here, which is happened to a lot of people. And, but I think that's part of it. And I grew up in that, So, it was kind of crazy. It was, and I was up here going to university, but I still got drafted. Because paperwork didn't flow the way it should have, and I had to go down, do my physical, and if I had passed the physical, I'd headed off to Vietnam. Now,
really? I
didn't pass the physical because I had asthma and hay fever and all fairly severely, so, basically they wouldn't take me, but that's the way it was, and but I lost many of my friends over there.
Wow.
I lost the friends who got killed there, and I lost some of the friends who actually came back because they weren't the same. They were not the same.
I'm sorry. Keep it up. Right. I'm just.
It's okay. No, it's so. I mean, that's that's how I grew up. So. But I think at some point it still gets back to how do we find situations where we feel listened to, respected, and whatever else, and that we have value in our voice and we know it. I think those kinds of things help us to be stable.
Mm-hmm.
They help us to ride out some nasty stuff that happens in every life.
Yeah.
But when they're missing, that's when we feel devalued, alone, isolated, angry, and all of those other things take hold and take seed, and but I don't know. We live in difficult times, and I don't know if any one time is any worse than the other. We're living through some nasty stuff now. When Vietnam War was there, it was nasty. So we just seem as a human race to somehow always have this stuff going on. But when we feel, or when somehow we develop a stability about ourselves and a self-worth, because we've grown up being listened to, not obeyed, but listened to, respected, we tend to, I think, really become a stable adult as we grow up. And, and if not, then we tend to, bump on the crags and the edges of life, and it's not comfortable, it's hard to watch, and there's a lot of pain.
Right. Do you think, like you said, mental health is probably the same back when you were growing up in the 60s. Do you think there was a point, all right, we're starting again. We switched to my phone. The video looks different. The camera died there, but what was it? I was gonna say
mental health and years past versus now, or...
Right. I was gonna say, do you think there was a point in society where this got worse, or I mean, where humans as a society kind of changed as far as mental health? And
I think our approach to it and our willingness to talk about are changing. I think a lot of mental health back in my day, and probably even before it, and in my early years, was hidden. If I actually had to measure the pile of names and people who were probably suffering in what we might call a mental health issue, you know, I'm not so sure it's worse now. I'm just saying where our awareness of how bad it is now getting clearer.
Right.
So at the same time, there are many of people who lived back in the day, the 60s, late 50s or something, who might tell you if you were, discussing this, that, well, what was going on in my house or what was going on in my neighborhood, and what was kept under wraps, so was not talked about because it wasn't acceptable. Now, what we have is at least a willingness or an openness to be talking about it.
Right.
And now we have actually budgets to try to deal with it. Back in my day, if you went back and even looked at budgetary things, you might find out that most mental health issues were just taken care of by your doctor. And then your doctor was finely tuned with your parents back in the day.
Mm.
So, I don't think that, really we had defined a whole lot of mental health back in the day. And we certainly didn't put money toward it. You went to your doctor. So I don't know if the societal supports were there. But now that we can talk about it, define it, and do things like this, and that we can't even avoid understanding that we're having an issue there, now governments to begin to, through the years, are beginning to actually put money aside to help people who are suffering.
Right.
Whereas maybe in my day and before, the whole concept of suffering from mental health didn't raise its ugly head too much unless it really got off the scales. So that it, and now it's there, it's in your face, and we've sort of pulled the shade back so we can see, what's happened. And now you have, how would you say, undermanned, if you will, but we do have places where you can go and can get help and do those things. So, and we're not done. I think the whole concept of mental health and getting into the, how to take care of each other and how to take care of ourselves is still, it's not fully formed yet. We're continuing to work on it, the needs, and, how do we address these issues, because they're hurting us. They're hurting us not only as individuals, but as a society in general. But I still think back then it was just, I can think of many situations that existed that I would probably, say would easily fall into abuse or, whatever, today, but were never looked at like that way back when. Right. So anyway, that's just my take, and I just think right now we're better able to identify it and stand up and say, here it is. But I still think today some things are still happening in the background that we don't even know about, and people are suffering, but more and more it's coming to the front, and it needs to, because we need to deal with this. But the answer to some of these issues, it gets back to some of the stuff we're talking earlier, like unless we learn how to, build bridges and do, as simplistic as that sounds, and respect each other and be in true dialogue and really listen to one another. And I don't see it changing when people don't feel valued or respected, and for how they feel, how they, their ideas, their concepts, whatever. It's just really, it's something we'll continue to suffer with until we figure it out. But because, I think we're going to live with it as long as people feel abandoned and devalued and all that other stuff. So it's just, I hope we figure it out. But till we do, we're going to have to find ways to deal with it.
Right. And I think things that you're doing, like all the coaching stuff, all the connections that you made, and people like you and giving back to the community, I think that's a step towards better mental health of the people that you affect, hopefully.
Yeah, I like to think of it this way, is that each and every one of us, Joe Puiia does what Joe Puiia does. If the Lord gave me certain gifts, then I need to share them. That's just me. That's how I feel. But the fact of the matter is that we all have those gifts.
Yes. Yeah.
The thing of it is, it's just, again, sharing them, opening up the passageways where, you can share your gift with others, and that you don't hoard or hide it, that you share it. And I think we talked about this silly little analogy I have of a tapestry. And so part of the humbling part of me knows that I'm just one little loop on that entire tapestry. And just looking at that loop by itself, it actually means nothing.
Yes.
To the picture.
Yeah.
But when we see everybody's little loop or that tapestry, then it creates a wonderful picture.
Yeah.
So whether it's Joe or Matty or whoever else it is, every one of those loops means something to the whole. We all have gifts.
Yeah.
And it would just be beautiful, because I'm not the only coach on the field either.
Right.
I love having other coaches. You know that if I'm working with a group, that I have got in touch with you to come and have you assist me.
Right.
You also know that when I get you there, that I don't hang over your shoulder like, some big bird making sure you do right. No, I know what you have to give, so I bring you there and other coaches, and then enable you to pass on your gifts. That's how it works. So, so we all have them, and if there's value in the gifts that I've shared, then it's humbling, and it's great that it's happening, and it doesn't change my approach, because I'm just going to be who I've become, and hopefully who the better Joe that will hopefully be tomorrow and the day after that, because I still have to grow and get better myself. But on the other side of it is that when you are part of a group of, say, somewhat like-minded people who are doing the same, that's where the real beauty is. Hey, that's where, people come, they work hard, they struggle, dig, scratch, and claw to get better each day.
Yeah.
And then they know that even though coach pushed you really hard that practice, that he's in your camp. He's actually your fan. He's rooting for you. He actually goes to your games sometimes just to watch and be a fan and clap.
Yeah.
And when an athlete or a client or whatever knows that's where you're coming from, it makes a difference.
Right.
I think, anyway.
No.
That's just me.
I think so, too. Sorry, I'm forgetting up all the time.
All right. It's all right.
But, I think that's really interesting, what you said about, everybody sharing their gifts. And I think that is, that's so true. We all can give to the community, and then the more we give, the better everyone is, right? It makes me think about, from an evolutionary standpoint, there's that saying that it takes a village to raise a kid.
Yes.
And talk about, there's a lot of talk now about community, how important community is, and how we used to live in tribes as human. And it's just it makes me think, we talk a lot about connections and stuff. It makes me think, at what point in the human evolution did we lose that community, tribe connection, and kind of move into the modern day society where we're missing that, and that ends up being the kind of the root cause of.
Yeah. And I guess sometimes I feel when we isolate ourselves and when we start thinking that this whole thing we're living is about us, it's about me.
Yeah.
We end up getting in trouble. We don't we don't reach out. We don't lend a hand when a hand is needed. We basically take care of our own house and our own lawn and our own garage, and the fact that your neighbor's falling apart means nothing to you. Then to me, they even say that even the animals of the forest, they have a way of taking care of each other. They're still prey, and there's still that other stuff of nature that goes on where somebody's on somebody else's food chain, but at the same time there's some kind of balance. There's a balance in nature. There's a balance. Sometimes it's the human thing to get out of balance, and because I think the things we end up valuing and being protective of get us out of balance. Instead of being an active member of your community, giving back, sharing your gifts, then we tend to isolate ourselves, do things like normally, we're the species that does that. We make the decisions at that level.
Yeah.
And we get in trouble when we do it, to the level where people feel not part of it, isolated, abandoned, whatever, or oppressed by it on either extreme. My feeling is that's when we lose it. That's, when we are, showing our worst side.
It seems to be related to materialism. I think in some level, we kind of get wrapped, like everyone says like money won't make you happy and all that stuff, and it's like you gotta live, but really what that is trying to say, I think, is that don't forget what's really going to make you happy, and that's the connection and the people that your community and
I do agree.
What's healthy for you?
Well, yeah, and I think when you value what clinks in your pocket, or you do need to eat, you do need to pay your rent, you need a reasonable house, hopefully, or apartment, a place to stay. But they're kind of, a product of your hard work, hopefully. But what I'm thinking is that when I'm coaching, when I'm giving back in that way, to be honest with you, that's when I feel my real purest joy. Like, you've worked hard, you've, with somebody who is also working hard, you're making progress, you're doing stuff like this. It's, that's where your true joy happens. I sit here and read Aragon to my grandchild. There's no money.
Yeah.
There's, I'm so filled with joy just sharing that time.
Right.
Like, I couldn't put a price on it. But when I start, wanting, I had the Chevy, but, that Cadillac, I'm going to spring for that. Yeah. But is it actually going to make you happier? I'm not thinking so. The wheels roll, they go down the street. I don't know how much, pure joy you're going to get out of that. And, it's just like other thing. I remember somebody said, I love ice cream, but you know what? If you just keep putting bowls of ice cream in front of me and say, eat, at some point, even though I love ice cream, it stops tasting good at some point. and I've got to put the spoon down.
Yeah.
Because
been there a few times.
There's no, but there's no real joy. I mean, there's, an experience and joy of having a bowl of ice cream, but then after a while, it doesn't hold that joy. But every time you sit down with a grandchild or to do those kind of things, go to the park, do the kinds of things with your fellow humans, sharing, then those things stick with you. They don't wear away. They don't lose their value. They just stay there, and they're part of your, your joy of life and whatever, where material objects don't. But, the thing of it is that some people, like they say, the whole thing, the Joneses,
keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, they, the first thing you do is you buy a lot away from everybody else in the society, build a bigger home, build a higher fence, in hope that you get what? Are you going to actually ever really be happier, isolated, away, up on the hill, as opposed to being with your neighbors? To me, I don't think so. I don't know. It's just everybody's going to do their own thing, but I got a feeling when we do that, when we pull ourselves away, when we isolate, there's other kind of negative things that go with that. That's just my take. It's my take. I'm sure I'd get an argument from the person building that house behind the higher wall and the trees. Some of that, may seem attractive to them, but it just, to me, it's part of another internal message that's being sent by that group sometimes, and that is they do want to be isolated. They don't want to be too near their neighbors. It's showtime, and it just gets you away. I'm not tarring them with a brush, or that I know what's going on in their heart and soul when they do that, but anyway, materialistic, fighting for that bigger and better, there's a bit of emptiness in there too, at least for me. People are sharing their gifts, whether it's at a county fair or, a flea market or just at the local playground. To me, that's what we're meant to be. Mm-hmm. And that's just my opinion, but that's where our real joys are too. I think it's built in.
Yeah, it is.
The gift to the giver. You can't refuse. Like when you give a gift of yourself and the gifts that you've been given, when you give yourself away, when you give those things away, you are automatically given a gift that you can't refuse. And it's not money. It doesn't cling. You can't buy anything with it other than peace.
Yeah.
And, that's just the way I feel about it anyway. I'm sure there's other opinions out there.
No, I think that's true. And that's, really wise. No, it's kind of sad to see, and I think, it really does make sense though. Like, it's just what's natural, Like, the materialistic things aren't natural. They're just things.
Yeah.
So, and it's sad to see that, people get wrapped up in it for whatever reason, and maybe they think I need this to keep up with the Joneses, or I need this and then someone will love me if I have this, or someone will pay attention to me if I have this.
But if you talk to somebody who is struggling with mental health and ask that question to them, was the reason you're struggling with your mental health because dad and mom didn't buy you the car? I don't think you're going to say, yeah. I think you're going to hear something totally different.
Mm-hmm.
And that something is part of feeling valued in their life, feeling valued and listened to and respected from a human standpoint, not a materialistic one.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry.
So, I mean, like when we do really struggle with mental health, those issues don't tend to be,
materialistic.
Materialistic. you know, solely. I think they're more feeling disconnected and abandoned and alone and these kind of things, or angered or whatever. Um, but they have nothing to do with the size of your house or how shiny your car is.
Right. Now, when did you retire?
Okay, I retired in, I think it was the beginning of 2010 officially.
Okay.
And I was at head office at Veterans Affairs in Charlottetown.
Okay. I'm just curious. There's a lot of talk now of technology and that how it affects mental health. Just curious your perspective if you've noticed. You're not necessarily in the field, like as in working in the field of mental health, but I mean you coach all the time. I was just curious if you've noticed kind of a difference in mental health since maybe social media, Facebook,
I
growth in technology.
I do, and I think those technologies add some very positive things, but when they serve to replace my human relationships or the relationship to those people who I share space with in society, in my home, in my house, in my village, in my whatever, then I think we get in issues. And then they aid and abet to our feeling abandoned, because if that becomes your life, or that you can't exist without it, and now your battery runs out and you can't, and you feel like, oh my God, like you can't go on because, how could my battery run out? You just sort of, you don't want it to, you want to use it for its benefits, and I think there are benefits. And I know benefits for me because I have our youngest son is in China. So I need my electronics to get on and chat with him,
right?
Time with him. But, I think what you see some of it is that we get so engrossed in it, so can't do without it.
Yeah.
So what are you displacing? Like, what part of your existence, and even your human existence, is being pushed out of the way,
Right.
And you're even starting to see funny but cryptic little things on Facebook saying, like, if you're going to take me out to dinner, you better not, we're going to be unplugged. In other words, saying, we're not going to sit at the table, you staring at your screen, me staring at mine, and thinking we're out together.
Yes. Exactly.
But you see that a lot.
Yeah.
Or people walking through an intersection
with their phone,
having left the sidewalk in a busy intersection and have never looked, other than looking at the color of the light, just basically don't stop texting, don't stop talking, and there's cars going, it just blows me away.
Yeah.
It's this kind of like so locked in that you can't separate yourself from that device.
Right.
And I think when it gets you away from your human, what should be good human contact, with your, whether it's a child or your sister, your brother, your whatever, if it ends up getting in the way of those relationships or displacing that quality time, then you got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You got a problem.
Yeah.
And it's just, again, as humans, I don't know what it is, and I'm one of them, but we tend to gravitate toward the extremes. Like, we really struggle with balance.
Yeah.
I'm going to binge watch a show. Well, I can't just watch one and then, go for a walk with my my kids. No. I'm going to binge, it's just sort of like we, it's, how we fill up our 24 hours. It just, and where the quality is in that 24 hours, and the real stuff that is your sustenance that gives you the real good feelings and stability, that you're going to pawn that off on, by filling it with some inanimate object, So anyway, that's me. I'm an old man. That's the way I, I'm 70. I've got grandchildren. We got kids. So I'm more into the value of those things than I am in the electronics. Although I do use them, I just use them as I need them. But
yeah. No, I think that's true, though. I think it's very true. And I think there's starting to be awareness of that now. I think, because it's only 10 years old,
Truly, yes.
So, I think we're starting to understand it now. And, it's starting to swing the other way maybe a little bit, where people at least understand what's going on.
Because, and again, it's the extremes. Like you can see now, we're having trouble with Facebook. We're having trouble with these other things because as humans, we tend to want to gravitate toward these freaky extremes. Like, what pictures are we sending to each other? What kind of words are we sharing with one another? So it's not like, okay, like I talk to China with my son, which seems like a good use of that, because then we can chat with him. He's thousands of miles away. But then we get into all of these other kinds of really negative, kind of nasty uses of the same
technology. Yeah. It's kind of like it's a tool that you have to learn how to use correctly.
Yeah, and your question to the mental health and these things, we already know, like this where cyberbullying and being just really nasty, that some people are tying some suicides into some of the byplay on, whether it's Facebook or any of these other things. And so, when those kind of things develop and displace, your true human and hopefully quality contacts, or the opportunity for quality contacts, then we start getting to the extremes out on the edge versus, using these in helpful, fun, appropriate ways. But, and then of course now they're even writing articles and doing stuff about the selfie generation, that we can't seem to stop taking pictures of ourselves. Now, I don't know. I'm too old. I don't do it. And at 70, the picture I'm going to take is of an old dude.
Yeah.
So, but, it's kind of like we're getting so focused on me and that the whole other thing gets, like I said, we get out to the extremes and then we end up in trouble. It seems to be, we have a hard time balancing the stuff we have as humans. We just seem to, gravitate toward, making something bigger, better, faster, whatever, and regardless of the cost.
Yes.
And it just, so we seem to not be able to be satisfied by, we're calling Steve today. We're going to talk to China today, and he's going to take us for a walk in China. And you're feeling good about that, but then others are looking for the bigger, the louder, and if it's not there for them, they feel unrequited. Or that, I got to find a way to get more, bigger. I don't even know if I'm making any sense, but that's just my
you definitely
take
are
on it. It's just
100%
extremes.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of layers to it, and I even noticed just from something I've been working on in my own life, and I even noticed from sorry, I'm just gonna make sure this is on again. Sorry, everybody, I keep getting up, but I even noticed from my own life just Well, I noticed it's a social crutch in social situations when you're out in public and you don't know the people around you. Something that's kind of disappearing is just talking to people around you. And like, say if you're in an elevator and there's 5 people in the elevator, there's a pretty good chance that they're going to do this just to pass the time because it's socially awkward in the elevator, right?
Right.
Whereas if there was no phones, maybe
You'd find a way.
yeah, someone say something about the weather and then someone tell a joke or something, you know. But
Yeah.
I noticed that in my own life. I mean, like going to the grocery store by my house, talking to the cashier, you know, opposed to antisocial behavior, like just looking at my phone, kind of being like, hey, you know, whatever, and then going on my way. It's kind of like you strike up a conversation with the people in your community, and then you kind of have like this. It doesn't have to be like a real close connection, but it's like I know this person. I talked to them a few times, and now every time I go to the grocery store, I have this person that I know, and it's like we're missing so much of that like life because we're, you know, if you end up doing that all the time, you just miss out on all these human interactions, and it's like what we need in the first place. That's
Well, yeah, and it's, I guess, what I've learned is that what you just described, you're actually sending a message one way or another. If you're staring into a screen, you are sending the message, I really don't want to talk to you.
exactly.
So I'm
yeah.
going to. Whereas if not, how easy is it to say something
Yeah.
like, what a day?
Yeah.
How hard was it to say that?
Yeah.
And somebody's going to say, yeah, it's, it's beautiful, it's rainy, it's this, just to strike up the conversation. It just doesn't take anything.
No.
You know,
It makes you feel better too.
it does. The gift to the giver, you can't refuse it. It just comes.
It makes you feel both parties. Like I even do it. I think people get surprised sometimes because it doesn't happen very much, and then you can tell they kind of like light up. It's like, oh, like,
Oh,
you know what I mean?
It's really, it's good. It almost always goes fairly decent. Like, I mean, it's usually, it's not like food market rage that you're going to run into or whatever.
Yeah.
If you say hi to somebody. Or I had an episode the other day that was really weird. I figure I was at Superstore or something like this, and I had we had a whole cart full of stuff, and all of a sudden this Asian young man came up behind me, and he had like a loaf of bread and a quart of milk. So I just said, hey, come on, go in front. I got a whole basket full of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he kind of looked at me like this was the most weird thing that ever happened.
Yeah.
So here he
Exactly. Yeah.
he's here as a a new person in in the village, so to speak. But just the fact that someone, and it's not a big deal. I didn't consider it a big deal, but the look on his face was like, oh, like it was almost like he didn't want to do it because he didn't understand what I was trying to do. So no, just go ahead.
Yeah.
It wasn't a big deal to us, but he was so taken back by it that it was just, and I was just saying, well, that's awful. Like why should you be taken like back or off stride by somebody just offering you to go ahead for an obvious reason? It was just like, but that's where we got ourselves to be. It's just sort of like, it's just a common courtesy. It's just a simple little thing, but it's almost like,
I think there's a thing too where, like, it depends where he's from, but some of those heavy populated cities in China, or here in North America too, there's a kind of this thing where it's like there's so many people that it's like your brain can't even comprehend. Like here, it's really good. People like will wave you off at a stop sign to let you go, or whatever it is. I love that about here. But there's kind of a thing in big cities, I think, where you life isn't as appreciated because there's a million people.
No, it's all about me. I am going here. I got to get there. You're in my way.
Yes. Yeah.
Or you're keeping me from getting there. And it's just sort of like, and then that turns into a bit of anger. And then it, depending on your state of mind, it can escalate onward. But when you think about it, it's just like, whoa, come on, what's going on?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
But then again, it's like, when we're so locked into the devices that we really don't appreciate what's going on around us, or lose the opportunity to say, hey, or even to the person who just checked you out, bagged your groceries, to say, hey, thanks, have a great day. I mean, what's the big deal? But they remember you. They remember somebody is saying thank you, genuinely.
Yeah.
That it's real, and that it's not just like, big deal, you're doing what you're paid to do. Give me the groceries, I'm out of here. It's just, but
there's something, I think it goes back to like the respect bridge building kind of thing, where it's like there's something when you're really engaged with someone, even if it's just a simple conversation like, how you doing today? Thanks for bagging that. Have a good day, or whatever. Like when you're really in the moment in a conversation with them and kind of like showing respect and openness, there's something that, there's a real benefit to it.
Yeah, and I think even with the coaching example, it's for sure, like, it's beyond the knowledge being shared. It's beyond that, because we have an inner sense of where's Coach coming from? Where's he really coming from? Is he just doing this because somebody's blah, 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 blah? No. They have a sense of your genuineness, or your, there's certain awareness of, where people are, when you're on the bridge, right? It's something you can't hide. It's something that both sides know. You're not there just because you have to be.
Yeah.
You've chosen to be there.
Exactly.
The door is open. It's not closed. It's just that, and it's a simple thing, but then it's the thing of value. And it's just, I think we as coaches, parents, whatever, I just try to, if I find myself slipping out of line, I have to give myself a cuff and say, hey, come on, old dude, get that out of the way. And, like, get yourself out of the way, just, because, we have a normal sort of code inside of ourselves to take care of ourselves and blah, 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 blah. But, I think at some point we have to learn how to appropriately move yourself out of the way and be with others.
Yes.
Truly be with others. Open to others. And that's when the good stuff happens.
Yeah.
And when you can't or won't do that, that's when the bad weeds can start to grow. That's, so it's, although we talk about the simple little exchanges in life that we have with the people in our life, or who are walking through our life, it's that simple, but it's got that much value to it too. So that's what I found. And the more times you can sort of kind of slide yourself a little bit out of the way so you can be with somebody, it just pays dividends, and it goes both ways. You can't even deny it. It just comes. It's automatically sent.
Yeah.
It's just, you can't run from it. It just, when you give, you get.
Yeah.
If you don't get, and the isolation and all the other stuff starts to creep in. So
You start trying to fill it up with other things sometimes
that's
too.
what most of those things may not have anywhere close to that good quality or value. Yeah. That's what I find anyway.
Oh, I think that's true. Thanks so much for doing this, man. I really appreciate it.
It's an important topic, and I just think we're struggling with it enough, and with like I said, we tend to gravitate toward extremes, and we get out of balance. So I mean, it's, to me, it's something we always have to be mindful of and work on. And then the more bridges we build, the more openness we have, and the more value we to the people in our lives, I think it sort of kind of adds to the collective stability out there.
Yes.
Like you don't get to feel abandoned, because you always know there's a couple of bridges, 2 or 3, that you can always travel on, that you're welcome on. So there's this sort of stability that creeps into your life. It doesn't even have to be conscious. It happens. You know there's certain doors, certain couches you can sit on. It's not a, it's when we don't have them that we get into trouble, and we hurt and we suffer, and it's just, so I think we have to talk about it, and we have to remain open. And like I said, I'm still on my own journey. I'm still, we never truly, totally become, we're never totally formed. We're always on some level of our journey toward becoming that way. And, I'm in my 70th year, and I'm still learning. So, but my hope is that, that the simple things that we start doing help the people in our life to feel valued, and know that your bridge is one they can walk on. And I just think, although it's a simple analogy, it works for me and it guides me, and that's just the way it is. So, as far as you and me, like, when you knock on my door, you just knock and you walk in. That's the deal.
Yeah.
Right? And and that makes me happy. That's how you feel about it. So, and that's just not going to change, right? As long as the old dude's up walking around, right? It's just, and we need to feel more of that from each other.
Yes.
I think then we'll have a more stable society, and we'll find, if we're running and we're living in more stable societies, hopefully we'll start to diminish some of the mental health craziness that's going on out there, and we'll have more people walking around feeling valued, knowing that they're not alone or isolated, and that there is a place for them to go to chat out their troubles, and or the things that are bothering them. And but it's the openness to each other that'll do it.
It's crazy. I just had this thought that, like, if you look at society, we're all racing towards something, like success, or what we think success is, and we think like happiness will be at the end of the road, and it's like, not that you shouldn't do things, but I think, like, it's just funny how we're all racing towards something, but
Right.
like a lot of times the answer is right there, and it's like each other,
Well, it is, but it's this old cliched thing, and I'll just be so catty as to say it. It's not that goal you're talking about. It's the journey.
Yeah.
It's the day-to-day footsteps. It's the it's the journey that's the trip. It's it's me when my grandson's coming to read the next chapter or two of Aragon. Like,
Yeah.
it's feeling, I can't wait till he gets here.
Yeah.
We got the lunch ready for him. He's going to curl up on the couch, and he's just going to, like, that's such a beautiful, sweet value of the day. What else are you going to give me value, really?
Mhm.
So yeah, it's those simple kind of things, but it's the journey. It's just, and just help, and that's what bridges are. They're walking, they're talking, they're sharing, that's what bridges are. They're life and movement. And when you don't have them, that's when we get into trouble. When you don't have your bridges, when you don't have your places where you can, that's when things get ugly and dark, and like you could say, if somebody's stable and healthy, you could call them any word in the book. You could almost do anything, but it's not going to have that kind of awful impact on them because they know who they are. They know they're valued.
Yeah.
They have friends. They have bridges. They have places to go and people to be with who care about them, and they know it.
Mm-hmm.
It's when and again, so that's my hope, and and this is why I want you to continue what you're doing, because it's important. It's important. It's get out. It's the shareware. It's the talking. It's the as simple as that analogy is, if we get out and we start building as many bridges as we can, knowing that the other person is looking to build one toward you or whoever, that's where it really starts happening, then you just fill your life up with some really good stuff, which really helps you when that crappy stuff comes along.
Yeah.
You're more resilient, you survive better, you're stable,
Something I learned, the inspiration from doing this is when my girlfriend committed suicide this 3 years ago. But something I realized right away after she died was just like the only thing that matters is like your connection, like your family and your friends, like the people you love. Because in that moment, I lost one of them, and everything else that we concern ourselves with, or that I concern myself with, all of a sudden didn't matter at all. Nothing mattered at all. It was just that this person's gone. And it didn't matter like what my job was, didn't matter what I was doing in school, it didn't matter anything. I could have been sleeping under a bridge, and I still would have been thinking about, her and not anything else. So it, experiences like that puts things into perspective, I think.
It does. Reality. It just, sometimes it sneaks in and just is not gentle. But it does have a way of knowing your scales and what has weight and what doesn't. And, which is the nature of this talk. And, we can't control all things. It's, like those things there. I mean, we don't control all the variables in a life or an experience or whatever, so we can just take care of what's in front of us and
exactly,
and do the best we can to do some of the things we're talking about this morning and or this afternoon, and just hope for the best and be there for each other when times really get rough. And we never know what's truly going on inside of another. We can guess, we can look at certain behaviors and make a guess, but you still never really know. And 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 with these kind of situations, there's the social stuff, the psychological stuff goes on, but there's chemical things that are going on inside of us. Our brains are all these other kinds of things that go on. So we don't really know all what people are dealing with, and it's difficult. So because we as humans, we tend to like to think we have control over this stuff, that we're in charge, and all life does every day is prove to us that we're not. So how do we live through our day? And it gets back to our discussion this today, and that is how do I best be with somebody? How do I be the best support? How am I with my family, my friends, my community? And it's it isn't some big complicated scientific equation. It's sometimes just the very simple things in living a life, a valued life, or as best you can. So it's humbling.
It is for sure.
When you start paying attention, it's a humbling. Life will humble you. You have to do the best you can with it, and but we can help each other along the way, and that's the deal. That's so. If when you're done your life, you can look back and feel that you've done a little of that you kept your doors open. Were willing to take your wheelbarrow and your mortar and your bricks to do that work. That's what's in your hands to do. So that's what you do.
Well, Joe, so much wisdom. So much wisdom. Podcast.
Oh, a lot of bumps, a lot of scratches. Share them, right? And just yeah. No, life has humbled me. But I'm more than willing to share if it. It's just my viewpoint. So it's just and it's important. It's important for each of us to. Today we're sitting here in Cornwall, but it's important that these discussions happen all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Where we're helping each other feel strong or feel there's hope, there's a place to go, there's people that I can talk to, we need these conversations, just normal, strong part of our lives. And
yes,
and then I start thinking we start, like, I sort of talk about it as this sort of community stability where we're taking care of each other. You mentioned it earlier. They say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, yeah, it does. So, and really, this is what we should be about doing. So, and it doesn't mean you have to have a pocket full of money.
No.
It just means that your gate is open, your road is open, and that you're willing to share your life with somebody else and what you have, your gifts. So that's what I hope happens out of this. So I say, don't put your microphones away. Just keep finding other good people to continue to share and promote conversation, dialogue, value in opinion, and value in that. And, I think we'll be on our way to the right place. So.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Joe. You're a fountain of knowledge. Maybe we'll have you on again sometime. And, I'll be coming to see you again anyway. But, yeah, I really appreciate this. There's so much knowledge
Not a problem.
you passed on. So
Not a problem.
thanks so much.